Okay, I'd like to call to order the 2024 Budget Committee of the City of Scappoose, May 13, 2024 at 5:30. Tonight, we are joined by all department heads. I'll go Lori Oliver Joseph, Community Development Director, Safety Director Brian Jensen, Finance Administrator Carol Almer, City Manager Larry Lehman, Public Works Director Dave Sukow, Utility Supervisor Doug Nassenbeam, Treatment Plant Supervisor Daryl Sykes, Treatment Plant Supervisor Kevin Turner. We are joined online virtual by Councilor Santiago. Kim Holmes is excused absent. The rest of the councilors are here. Budget Committee members tonight in person are Rita Bernhardt and Teresa Keller. We're joined online by Chris Vitron. If we see any more come online, we'll let you know. We do have a quorum so we can continue and vote tonight. Appreciate you all coming here tonight. Hopefully we'll get through this pretty quick. Tonight we are going to nominate a budget committee chair. If there's anybody that really desperately wants to do this, please raise your hand. No. I do recommend nominate Ty Bailey as our chair for this year. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a second. I think Ty brings great experience with budget committee. He was on the budget committee. He's a counselor. I think he'll do a really good job going through this. Any more discussion? All those in favor state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Sorry, Jeanette. We are kind of sharing microphones, so make sure if we are sharing that we're really speaking into them so they can hear us online. With that, I will hand it over to Ty Bailey.
Mr. Mayor, point over.
Yes, please.
He's certain that budget officer in this meeting and not a council meeting.
It's gonna be a council meeting. Yeah, it's a council meeting.
It's a combo.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. It has to be at a council meeting that you do the appointment.
So we're
Of
gonna
the
have to
budget
be-
chair?
Of the budget officer, I believe so, but isn't, yeah, the city manager is the budget officer. So just point of clarification on that.
Okay, are you asking, when does the council appoint another budget committee member? I can,
Like
okay,
historically, we always do at the beginning and then pass
Okay,
the baton and so on. So
all right. So that might be my oversight, sorry.
Last year, nobody stepped up and so I did it.
yeah, historically, we have also Mayor Burgess did it several times because no one.
We can do that.
I do
in
get the
this-
gavel.
this meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because this is kind of the official start of the budget committee group. So they established a chairperson and then we'll go from there. All right. Moving over, first order of business. Approval of the minutes, May 10th. Any comments, corrections, concerns? One second.
Move to accept the minutes.
I hear a motion to accept the minutes as presented. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by, I cannot see your last name. By Rita. Thank you very much. The second, any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, moving forward.
I'm sorry, I couldn't find my mute button fast enough. So did you say, did you say May 2nd?
Sorry, this
Wait,
was,
10th from last year.
yeah, May 10.
May 10th from last year. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you for clarification. Thank you.
All right. Moving forward, budget message. And for this, I will pass over to Larry, I believe, for the city budget message.
okay. Well, we're starting, I believe, with the urban renewal first. Is that correct?
Do we do the urban renewal first? In which case we need to start because we've initiated this meeting. So do we need to close this meeting
Okay.
and open the next?
You do the other.
It's a
We
different,
can just do the first, I'm sorry.
Go through the other first.
okay.
We don't care.
Yeah, urban renewal is technically a different subcommittee. All right. Floor is yours, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Budget Committee members. It's a pleasure to serve in the position of budget officer and be able to present to you the 24th, 25th City of Scappoose budget. The city budget is sort of a transition budget. This includes significant wage increases for police officers and works towards the city council goals of 24/7 police coverage. This police budget, the Scappoose wages will be competitive with neighboring jurisdictions and includes the funding for 8 patrol positions. The amount of the contractual professional services and mostly for legal fees, which we hope will not be needed. While general employees all except police personnel, the budget includes a 3% cost of living adjustment. Employment stays the same as last year with the exception of 1 new employee in the storm sewer fund. The general fund budget continues the council goal of putting funds in the Parks Department reserve by adding $100,000. This fiscal year, the city is working on major projects that make the overall budget appear very large in comparison to normal years. It includes the Keys Reservoir, completion of the Dutch Canyon Well number 3, the salt well that is currently being drilled, large wastewater treatment plant projects that includes irrigation basin, grit removal, and a biosolids dryer. The city is very fortunate to receive a large amount of American Rescue Plan funds that make many of these projects possible. I would like to thank the Finance Administrator, Carol, and all the department heads for work they have done to prepare this budget. With that, I'll turn it over to Carol.
Okay, so I kind of go in and out of this. Let me know if I think you should be able to hear. Normally, tell me if you want me to do something different, but I normally would go to the general fund at this point.
Well, before we go to the actual individual funds, we do need to open for public hearing and comment and then accept state funds before
Good.
we actually move to the individual
Good
budget.
move.
So, if you were done, Larry. All right, opening to any public comment about specifically the individual funds or things that we're going to cover currently. Hearing and seeing none, unless Michelle was unmuted for just a second. Moving on to state revenue sharing. Looking for a motion to accept state revenue sharing so that we can get the state revenue funds.
Mr. Chair, I move that the city accept the state revenue.
Hearing a motion, do I hear a second?
A second. Oh, where?
I was gonna say Teresa Keller seconded. And make sure to the microphone as well. All right, hearing that, any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of accepting state funds, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Reversal? Let's have it. Thank you very much. Now, we will move to the individual funds, starting with the general fund. And Carol, kick us off. We'll just start walking down the tabs.
Oh, okay. That is, we're starting at tab 8. That's the general fund. So the purpose of the general fund is we take the property tax money, we accept a lot of the revenue that's general fund revenue. And, that's from property taxes, franchise fees, license and permit fees, and some intergovernmental revenue. There's some of that in other funds also. Charges for services, interest transfers, and other miscellaneous income for sources. These general funds have to, they basically fund the administration department, police, planning department, municipal court, and the parks and grounds funds. So we'll talk about those all individually. Now, all of these funds, everything that comes out of the general fund has to be split between all those departments. So, and basically we try and keep the cash position. We want to keep everything running correctly, and just stay within our budget. So this year we have a beginning cash position of $4,665,639. So that's substantial. It's a healthy amount. Okay. This amount provides the city with the working capital to meet the general fund expenditure requirements. And it also gives us enough money to get through until we get property tax revenues in November. So we have a 4-month period of time that we need to maintain paying our bills before we get a new property tax revenue. And we do have $1.5 million set aside to make sure that we do that. We're able to do that. So we also have got a substantial, really a healthy contingency with the budget that's presented of $1,407,221. So that will be there if we happen to need it, which we don't expect to. So we don't use it without, we don't use a contingency without coming back to council. So the current year resources that we've got, and you can probably see them better than you can hear me read them, we've got property taxes, which I over budgeted. I budgeted too high last year, and I know that Teresa caught that. So I know the budget for 23-24 did go down. Our property taxes received are not going down. They're going up by 3% at least, because we do get a 3% increase in the property taxes every year. That's what we budget. So, and last year I didn't quite know what I was doing, so I had a bad number in there. So, but we didn't spend more than we got. That's the kind of the bottom line. I think all the rest of the numbers probably look, pretty close to what you need. Does anybody have any questions about the revenues or specific revenues?
I do if we have
Presented.
a chance.
I was gonna say, if
Yeah,
we're ready to move to questions,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mayor Backus, if you.
Just real quick on you have a couple that, when you, like last year, you budgeted internal or intergovernment revenue 613 and we only are getting about 347, but you're again budgeting 617. A lot of these we got less than we thought, and now you're budgeting the higher number again. Are you confident that we'll see higher numbers than we did last year? Or are we just going off last year's budget?
I was going off last year's budget. I don't see any reason. I do keep some of those numbers in there because we have a couple of items that, like the CET funds that fall into that. And those we don't ever get until generally June. And it's based on building permits and, other revenue. I think Lori's gonna
Correct.
pop in.
It's a pass-through amount, the CET construction excise tax. So it's charged on building permits, but it's a pass-through. So we collect it and then we send it on to the school district. So we don't keep it. So even if that number's lower, it doesn't affect us per se, because that would be passed through anyway.
So we only send out what we get, but I know there's a budget line in there for $225,000, and that's what we have pretty much always budgeted for it. But we haven't gotten it. So it looks like we haven't gotten anything. I don't know if we're gonna get any or not this year, but if we don't, the expenditures are gonna go down by that amount also. But we have to budget the expenditures, so we can pay it if we get it, and we don't pay it if we don't get it. Does that make, I hope that makes some sort of sense to you. I didn't understand this at all last year. So.
Similarly, actually, on the same point, and feel free to add more if you need to on intergovernmental, but on miscellaneous, the delta between planned and actuals, both historic and for the next year, seem pretty broad. Like, what falls under the miscellaneous and why are we over budgeting associated there?
Not sure I have a good answer for that. But I will find out and we'll email everybody because, again, because I probably did pretty much what we did last year. Tell you what, I can tell you.
Yeah, and it's mostly, not necessarily to get into all the details, just if we're consistently at like 1/3 of that tranche, why?
Yeah, You don't want me to look it up right now, so I will get you the numbers on that.
Any other questions on specifically general fund? I have more, but I want to make sure everyone has a chance to.
One last, we went to that training last week, Carol, and remember they did say franchise fees seem to be kind of going away more than coming back. So just in future budgets, make note of that. There's a few of them that are fighting that they don't feel they should be paying franchise fees. But I think with our contracts and everything, I think we're good for a little while.
Yeah, because Comcast is paying those every quarter. So they haven't argued with us about them, and we have a new franchise agreement with that. That was kind of that federal law, I do believe, that was trying to get rid of them.
Thank you.
Next one I had is actually on page 48, just the jump in licenses and permits, the projection of moving up on our licensing and permitting. Just is that holdover from previous year in terms of like aid, or what is the cause of that?
Now, licenses and permits, last year I didn't budget it. We had waived, Mayor Burge had not had any license and permit, business license revenue for like since 2007. And we just reinstated that last year. And so this year, I had under budgeted it last year, but we still ended up with about $40,000 worth of license revenue this year. So that one is expected, outside. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we did have some outside revenue, but our no inside the city businesses had to pay any license fees up until last year. You guys approved that last year in our fee hearing to reinstate those.
And general question, probably going to apply to basically everyone's tranche. What is the assumption we have both for inflation and for interest rates that we're running for this year's budget?
We're expecting on the interest rates, obviously we had a lot less budgeted last year, so we ended up way over. But I kept it about the same. Right now, the LGIP is running 5.14%, which is not bad, compared to the 0.3 or whatever we got the last number of years. And so I just kind of carried it the same, kept it the same.
And is that a variable, or do we have like a longer term bond situation assorted to the?
We don't have longer term bonds at all. We're just.
I assume high yield savings, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, we're just using LGIP because it's safe.
And then in terms of just the inflationary level, I know on a personnel basis, we have some structure there. Do we do the same thing on our capital or material goods? Like, do we have just like a baseline? We assume everything's going to be 5% more expensive. No?
It's not really. And that obviously has been a struggle because, last year, we get 3% increase in the property taxes and not that much more, in anything else. But you've got wages going up. You've got everything we buy has gone up 15%. So it makes the general fund struggle. It's a struggle for all of us, in all the different funds.
Do you want me to add to that a little bit?
Feel free.
Sure.
Yeah, so as far as public works goes, when we all put these together, we dive into it chemical by chemical, bolt by bolt, and we assess what those trends are. So we don't just throw a generic percentage at it. We actually track the data and know what increasing that we've been seeing, or we talk to our vendors in advance and confirm what those numbers are going to look like.
And we do get numbers from our vendors too. And general fund is a little harder, but, we do get, what they're expecting to charge us this year.
And it is worth noting more for everyone else that like we have a fixed amount that we can raise. So
Yes.
we're really associated to inflation sharply because we can't raise more revenue associated.
Yeah.
I have another on page 50. Planning and development fees. That's a hop. What's up?
There's a change. Lori, she's gonna talk more about it later, but the revenue is the side that we.
Yeah, so we'll discuss it when we get to planning, but essentially there is a proposed move to have the city engineer position funded 50% out of planning this year. And as a result of that, and that's to bring it under the kind of purview of Community Development Center, which is where that position is housed. As a result of that, all of the fees that the city engineer collects for his services would come to the general fund and remain with the general fund. So that's why you're seeing that jump.
Thank you very much.
Bet.
Right. Anyone else on just general fund, or should we move forward to the administrative department?
One question on page 51, is that a typo? Instead of 1.9 million, is it 4.936?
Oh,
The total for last year,
total estimated.
estimated FY 23-24 on 51, it
estimated?
shows as 1.9, but it should be more close to the 4.9.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying,
The first one
I'm
is
trying to do the
2.58.
math.
I would assume that's
Yes,
correct.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a typo. I
We
will
can get
fix
that
that.
corrected as well. Yep. Spot, thank you.
Gotta place a mark on all these.
All right. Moving on to the administration department.
Okay, the administration department includes the city manager and support staff in City Hall. Some of those do have some funding from other funds also. We do split up some of that, the cost of personnel. And we handle the day-to-day management of the city, you know, and try and keep things going for the city council goals and action plans. We manage city contracts, you know, franchise agreements, grant projects, and we do respond. We're basically the primary initial responder for citizen inquiries and complaints. We also manage the city records and the city recorder and human resource functions. The city manager obviously receives his direction from the city council, and the city manager sets policies for the city through goals and your ordinances and resolutions. This council does that. So, but the city manager makes sure that we have an effective working relationship with citizens and community groups. And our vision is, of course, to ensure that the city operates in accordance with the city charter, the state and federal laws. We like, you know, part of our goals is to promote community events and promote outreach, as well as handling the, like the utilities and other questions. The current budget for administration is $1,448,283. I could make these even, it would make it easier. And 107,000 of that is for personnel services, and 1,300,546 for materials and services. Now, within the materials and services, there are some bills that you cannot do very well by splitting them up. We've changed a lot of things in the last year since I've been here to try and charge things out as we actually pay them. So in the past, they had a lot bigger amounts that they would transfer to administration, and administration would pay them all. Now we're trying to split up things that can logically be split up and pay those in the bills, so we have the detail out in the departments and department heads can see them. But we do have some things like most of the phone bill and the phone bill split. So, but we do have the things like the software bill, and those things are, you know, they're paid out of administration, janitorial, you know, that comes out of pest control. And so those amounts are transferred from the other departments in a transfer, which is down, as it's in there as a revenue, to the general fund from the other departments. And the department heads all have lists of those transfers, and they're actually listed in their budgets, how much is being transferred to the general fund. And that's true with every department, even if it's a general fund department. So PD transfers money to administration to pay certain bills. But we're trying to keep things as separated as we can.
Chair, I have a question. Okay. Thank you, Carol, for taking us through. I appreciate it. I just have a couple questions, just so as I'm new to this process, just make sure I'm understanding. So when we jump to page 54, I'm noticing every department will go through. It has sort of the top header talks about expenditures, and underneath it says personal services, material services, capital outlay, etc. So personal services is in reference to personnel services, so how much we're
Yes.
paying everyone in that department.
Yes.
Perfect. And then materials and services, I understand that's a more broader header.
Mhm.
One of the things as council that we've talked about over time is to get a better understanding in terms of how we're spending money as it relates to using consulting services, also legal services. Those are two very distinct line items I know myself and a few other counselors would like to have more insight into. So is there a way within the budget to more clearly see how much money is being allocated to consulting services versus as well as to legal services?
Yes, there is. There's a way we can do it. I obviously did not do it in this particular budget, but we can split out into separate line items, anything that you would like to see split out. So we could take, if you want to see consultants and legal separate from other materials and services, we can do that. Or if you'd like to have it, have them, separated totally, you can. It's a little more bookkeeping, but it's something that can be done. I just need to change the information. I could do that if you wanted to start next year, starting in July, if you wanted me to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful because I think that's one way in which we're able to control our spending.
Sure.
It's one of the levers we have. And so I think that would be helpful for us to make better informed decisions.
So,
I add to that.
sure.
Just for clarity, since you said you knew, you probably already knew this, but on that same page, anything that ends with a 2 of that last digit, see how that would be like 10-100, 201, 10-100, 202?
Mhm.
You seeing those? Anything that starts with 2, that's gonna fall under that materials and services bucket.
All 200s are materials.
All 200 material services,
Mhm.
anything that begins with a 300 is gonna be in the capital.
Capital.
So just for some context as we move through this, that'll help you identify the differences.
And
So
Then like
two-
you would be
so
looking for the
230.
section 230.
230 is
Yes.
contract.
Yep.
Yeah, so the contractual services line, that 217,600, that includes consultants and attorneys, as well as a number of other things. It also includes Dave Mallor, your IT.
IT services, yeah.
Yeah, it includes a number of different things. It includes janitorial is in there too. So that's a big line item,
Yeah.
and it has a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah.
And so I can certainly split that out. And as long as you let me know, would you rather I split that into, do you want contractual and attorneys, legal together, or do you want them separate?
Separate, because attorney fees are so much greater than even consulting fees at times, but
Yeah, because we
we
don't have.
actually go out consult and we bring in consultants to do work.
Mhm.
Janitorial, like I understand there's certain,
maybe the difference between consulting and contracting, like
Yes.
you're,
Yeah.
yeah, as opposed to contracting out a project, you're bringing in expertise or
Yeah.
consultancy.
whenever we're bringing some expertise in.
And so an outside consultant, it wouldn't include like, our IT guy that we're,
Correct.
because he's kind of a consultant. Because I know we don't have that much budgeted in there, but yeah, I can do that. And we can do that, and we'll probably do that for every fund, I would guess. So let me get some new numbers for those.
And again, this can be, on a go forward, just so that we're more,
Right.
we have, again, it just goes back to the levers that we have to pull to help rein in our spending.
So what I will probably do then is to take that line and split it into we'll leave one line and we'll have two additional lines for starting July 1st. And I'll split up the number, it's 217,000, by what we expect to be attorneys and what we expect to be consulting. So, and I will do that, but I probably should do that and send you a revised sheets, I'm guessing.
And I noticed that Counselor Santiago has a hand up.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to get a clarification on line 243 to define economic development, what that cost is.
Let me get back there.
I'm
Page
sorry, that's on page
54.
54. Yes.
Bottom of it, economic development. Big drop from previous years as well.
Oh, yes, a lot of that is because of, we don't have Adventure Fest. Because that Adventure Fest came out of the economic development budget this last year, and we still had quite a bit left to pay in 2024. But now that that has been moved and has gone, to the library to handle, that's $120,000 pretty much. So it's huge.
Right, get to
Okay,
Rebecca's one
thank you.
overriding question as well. Actually looping back, comparing page 44, so 2 tabs back to our overarching, to the page 54. It seems that our actual like fund costs are not matching. So like total personnel cost, page 44 has 120,600 top line for administrative, and then on page 54 it looks like we're at 107,777.
Okay, I will, I'm not, 140, page 44 and 54.
Just wondering if the reports were taken at a different time or how much delta we have in our overall reporting associated.
Are you looking at the chart down at the bottom? Yeah,
Just at the top, all of the line items, they don't match.
okay. I will fix that and send them to you, because and I apologize, there's so many, I'm not
Well,
learning
I was gonna
this.
say, and more, which one is the accurate one? Because that's the important.
Okay, I can assure you that the one that is on 54 is accurate.
Is the accurate?
That's the accurate one.
Cool. And I believe you had a question.
Just real quick, also, does CEP funds come out of any of those? Economic development? That,
CET?
no,
No.
CEP Community Enhancement Program?
Oh, that comes out, yes, you're right. That has doesn't that have a separate line?
I've
I thought that has a separate line.
never, but it might be somewhere else. But also above,
No, CET comes out of community contributions.
again, at the top of that page, page 54, your materials and services last year was budgeted for 142,000, but if you go all the way down this column, it was more like 1.4 million. Am I just misreading that, or? Because you're going from 142 last year to 1.3, your actual estimated is 1.2 million. It's a whole million more. And
No, that's,
Is that the difference between the budget and the estimate?
it looks to me like they're backwards. I don't know for sure. Well,
because when you add these whole column, budget 23, 24, it comes out to 1.45. That should be kind of what was in your
Yes.
budget for last year.
I agree, yes.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, the ones down at the bottom come straight out of the system. Those come straight out of the system, so those I'm very confident with.
Yeah, because I don't see any big changes from last year to this year, or budget to estimated, so I don't see $1 million difference. Some are lower. Thank you.
One other line that did go up substantially this year was the nuisance abatement. We did add more because we had been having $1,000 budgeted in nuisance abatement. And then when we started having to tow RVs, we found out it cost us like $3,500 a piece. for each of those. So we did increase that one pretty substantially.
That's disposal,
Disposal, yeah,
just towing, but also. disposal.
right, the towing and disposal, because nobody will tow them if they can't, you don't pay them to dispose them, so.
Element that I appreciate. I missed last year, so if you did it last year, cool. But something I've been asking for years is the actual chart at the end of the how much revenue versus expenditure historic we have, so that we can actually see what our guess is versus the actuals. Thank you.
Well, I haven't quite got it the way I want it yet. I did it kind of at the last minute, but that's where I get myself in trouble with with the, the numbers all not matching because I got 16 places to change everything.
Yep.
But I would like to, because my goal is for next year is to have the expenses broken up to operating expenses and capital expenses.
Mhm.
Because really, you want to keep your operating expenses comparable to your revenue, more or less. But the capital, is kind of, it would look really strange at this point.
Well, and as we go through these, that actually brings up a good one that I was looking at on these. Whenever we have a large delta, I'd love for whatever department head or whoever's speaking to the fund to discuss why that delta is. Is it operating expense? Is it capital expense? Are we doing a big project that's blowing up budget, or are we hiring staff? Did we have a misalignment? Something of that nature to
Because that's what's
justify the
important.
difference. Yeah.
That's what's important. So, but yes, any suggestions you have as far as, different kinds of graphs and stuff, I'm totally open to that. So,
Other items on administrative. All right, tab 10, moving over to the police department. Safety, interim public safety director, Jensen.
Thanks. Well, just a quick go over just the quick budget notes. I mean, the numbers are, you can see them. The total operational cost for the police department is going to be budgeted at $2,943,616, which is about just over a 2% increase from what we budgeted last year. Personnel services are at 2.3 million. Material and services is at 405,000. The largest expenditure is the contractual professional services, just like Councilor Jacobs was discussing earlier. 110,000, 54,000 of that is for employment attorneys. So that's a big chunk of it, nearly 50%. Our capital outlays budget about 103,000. The RMS that's listed is no longer going to occur. We're hoping to move that money towards a new police vehicle. We just had one of our vehicles go down and is junked. We need to get a new one, hopefully this year, and then just normal turnover. We need to get another one for next year. We have it.
All right. Opening up questions, comments, elements taking a look at specifically. To start things off, just looking at our expenditure growth year over year over the past 5 years, we have been doing quite a bit of investment. And we're still doing a bunch of jump up. That just trying to catch up to the rest of the area, or what's going on with our expenditure rate associated over the past several years? I know you haven't been here for all of it, but
Yeah, I have been here for very little of it, but that's okay. Did a little bit of homework. Yeah, I mean, the big giant expenditure that is preventable most likely is just going to be the attorney fees. I mean, that's just absolutely been suffocating our agency. Everything else seems to be fairly normal as far as increases go. Nothing to me stands out as crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's just normal stuff. You can see we've gone down on a few of the items. We're staying even on a few of them. It's tough in the sense that we're hoping to hire a bunch of more people. I know that was the same deal with last year. So that budget was seemingly inflated just because they were, high hopes. This year is similar in that sense that we're hoping to bring more folks on. With that is going to be more in uniform costs. It's going to be more in training. It's going to be more in all the things. So it's a little bit of a guessing game that's out of our control in the sense that, yeah, I want 4 new guys right now, but getting them that's the gamble. That's the tough part. So we're hoping, but, and that's what we're budgeting for.
Rebecca?
Just my question on page 58, the actual 2023 for personnel services, it went from like 1.35 million to the estimated 1.9. So last year there was a $600,000, jump from the year before. But did we increase a few officers? Those are mostly out of salaries. I mean, so maybe back in 2023, we weren't at 8 full-time officers. Is that a fairly new number of 8 people? That went up $500,000 in 1 year.
Yeah, it's gone up and down as far, they haven't had a steady 8 for, as far as I can tell, for quite a while. I think the increase just comes with, just additional people. And then, of course, we have the 2 sergeants, the lieutenant, the chief, and everything has just gone up. I don't know why there's such a jump, other than I know that they did budget for additional people that they were hoping to get in that last year's budget. That could explain the increase.
I do remember last year when they were actually, Alex and Chief Legal were, that's the number they came up with, to get me to put in here, so.
I know that they, again, had high hopes of getting a bunch, and so that was the reason for the inflated budget at that time.
Councilor Miller?
Yeah, I have a question on page 59 where it says insurance, last 3 are 238. Fourth one down from the top. It says 0 for insurance. Is that like our city county insurance premium? So when we did the
Yeah.
contracting exploration, we heard that I think the police department cost us somewhere around, could be wrong, but it was
Yeah.
a substantial amount. It was like $30,000 or $40,000.
Yeah, you'll notice that the transfer, the GF, ISF down in the 400s, number 4, line 402, went up substantially. The insurance is actually handled it's one of those transfers to the general fund to administration. So we pay that insurance all out of the administration department, using the money that we receive from all the other departments.
Okay, so the cost for the insurance for the police department is included in GFISF, 123,000.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
CIS insurance.
CIF.
Similar on page 59, both the travel and training, dues, fees, and subscriptions, just substantial jumps. I know probably the travel and training is literally new officer training, I would imagine, or sergeant training, things of that nature.
Yeah, and an attempt to retain.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was a large jump, and it's justified.
Then the dues, fees, subscriptions. What are those? Oh, always love a miscellaneous dues.
I mean, that's everything. I mean, we have, the big one is our LexiPoll, which is, it's a training tool. It's a policy manual. That's a, $5,000 a year subscription that we have. Region, which is our report writing, we have to give the city of Portland as kind of the holder of that. That's a large $12,000 subscription. So it's a lot of stuff like that. We did actually, when Carol and I went through it, we were able to eliminate quite a few of subscriptions that we just either weren't using or outdated or just not the direction that we want to be going. So the ones that we are paying, as best as we could tell, are necessary for the operation of the department.
I'm
We may
trying to
still-
remember, and I would not blame anyone for not knowing why we had the jump we did from the 18,543 up to 47. It was one specific thing I thought was the big expenditure there. That's the new baseline, but I can't recall from previous sessions.
Be interesting to go back and look. I'll go back just out of
Yeah,
curiosity.
or if there is a
Yeah.
specific large line item, we don't need to hash it out here, but I'd love to know what
Because we have,
percentage of those are going to where.
I know we have a similar thing with the administration department. We have, they take the software, the software costs are huge and they're going up really fast.
Arkansas. And then other one that I had was actually our equipment line item. The drop we had associated there, given our concerns on vehicle, so on. Page 59, 300, 311, just wondering how we're feeling equipment wise, given the expenditures in the budget line.
So we got rid of the RMS is no longer in there, so we're gonna be using some of that for, a new vehicle instead. That was a $80,000
Okay.
chunk. Other than that, we do have, I mean, outfitting the car is another 21,000. It, obviously, we're gonna need new cars every year, hopefully, you know, 1 or 2 a year as opposed to just buying 6 at once and then losing 6 at once. And then outfitting those cars, new radios, new rifle racks, things like that. So it's a jump, but that's what it costs to. And again, I want to remind you that the overall budget that we're asking is only about a 2%, just shy over a 2% increase from the prior one. So I think that we're not asking for anything that's nuts. I mean, believe me, I could have sent a wish list and we'd have a helicopter and 4 dogs, but
Mayor
I think
Backus?
we're okay.
Just real quick, numbers of officers, 8, or is the FTE a little below that? Are we paying on payroll less than 8 right now?
We're paying.
Or are
We
we,
have 2 open positions right now.
but we're kind of pocketing that until you hire? I mean, it's,
Yes, and we're paying 1 officer, that's not working, but not a full wage. And then we have a sergeant, we're FTE'd for 2. We have 1 sergeant that is on, a light duty. So we're not paying him a full. So that's just, yeah, we're just kind of pocketing that and using it hopefully to, start filling these positions.
There's another position, another, Oswald. We had another officer who was on payroll, for at least 6 months of the year. And I think he come off in March, I think it was, he come off payroll.
And Councilor Santiago?
Yes, thank you. So Brian, you just said that you are increasing the budget only by 2% from last year. Considering, and then you said that you're not really necessarily budgeting or holding on to the money right now because there's 2 positions that are open. But earlier you mentioned that there is going to be a vehicle purchase and hopefully another one the following year. So you think 2% is enough to budget for those vehicles? Because I remember them being really expensive.
Yeah, they are expensive. You're looking at probably 80 to 90,000 once it's, you purchase the vehicle and get it outfitted. So they are expensive. We did have the money already though. Counselor, we had that money set aside for a records management system, that is no longer going to occur. So that was a large chunk of it that we're hopefully going to get it for this year. And then, it was also budgeted for next year as well. We're just going to, roll that into a new vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
One element that we were looking at current year is the legal fees associated, all of that. Are we assuming that gets better next year, or how much are we padding associated to some of the challenges we've been having on a personnel basis?
I mean, yes, hopefully they do get better next year. I mean, that's the goal, right? Just hire good people, which is going to keep us out of legal mumble jumble with them. We are still reeling from past employees. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. I would imagine probably the majority of the upcoming year is going to be hampered by those folks. But as far as the folks that we have now and the folks that we're going to hire here in the future, hopefully the necessity to use a labor attorney is going to be dang near gone.
I was gonna say, and is all of that expense reflected in general fund, or is there like specific line connected? Because I know talking to Larry in previous sessions, we had substantial cost associated there that may not be bubbling on the line items connected to the police budget directly. Is that accurate, or where are we tracking those?
You're referring to the costs that we've spent over the last
Yeah,
years, like $500,000
yeah.
on legal fees. Yeah, we're not anticipating having those expensive numbers. I don't know, Larry, do you want to
Right.
talk a little
Well,
about that?
what you refer to, because I've referred to the $500,000 quite often, that is not all legal fees.
Okay.
what I was counting was the cost, basically in the police department, that it's cost us over the last year and a half, 2 years of paying for wages without getting any production. In other words, officers being off, we've had that. One officer's been off for 2 years with full pay. A little bit of, he works a little bit on the side, and we get reimbursed, but mostly full pay. Another officer was off most of the year. So that adds up, plus the legal fees connected with that.
Okay.
So over the last 2 years, it's been right at $500,000.
So that makes more sense.
But we're sure,
separating those.
we are sure doing what we can now to eliminate that and to control it for the coming year. We did issue a thing where no employee can call the city attorney without the city manager's position. I'm not sure that saved a lot, but anyhow, we're trying to control those.
I do have a question in regards to the estimate on how much legal fees is gonna cost, because before we had Peter Watts, that was a flat fee. And so that had the ability to control some of our fees related to legal services. So now that we're paying hourly for new attorney, do we consider that we were using a fixed rate attorney before and now we're paying hourly? So those fees may not necessarily go down because of that change in legal fee structure?
Well, we have the system, we have the system we have now, and what we're estimating is what did we spend this year? Because we had the per fee lady the whole year. And so we're looking at that and what's next year gonna be like.
We were paying hourly for the full physical year.
My understanding that's correct. Mhm.
Yeah, I think,
I don't remember when.
When did-
I do believe it started in August of last year, so it was virtually the whole year. I know Alex really padded the budget a lot last year for legal fees because we
Peter
had no
didn't
idea
handle
how
police
much it was gonna
department.
be.
He didn't do labor
No,
labor.
I know, I'm sorry, I should have clarified. I'm not specifically talking about the police department right now. I'm talking about in general.
Yeah, in general.
Because we don't have. a line
General,
item for legal
yes.
Fees in the police department. But I'm just making sure that we did take that into consideration, that legal fees are inherently probably going to be more because we are not on a flat rate anymore. So I just hope that we analyze that.
Yeah, because those are included in the contractual professional, so.
But that also gives us the opportunity to reduce them. So hopefully, someday we'll see it back to where we would be normal.
One question I did have, this does talk about the negotiation with the union. It estimates some increase.
Yes.
Built in. Conservative.
What we're expecting.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Moving to tab 11, Parks and Recreation. Parks Department, sorry.
Yep, that'll be me. Thank you, Budget Committee Chair, Evening Budget Committee. So as we go into the parks, obviously it's part of general fund, so revenue's been already explained by Carol. So we'll just talk about the expenditures. The total expenditures for parks is $731,749. That includes the personnel services of $318,602, material services, $165,295, capital outlay of $230,000, and some transfers, $15,852. So for the parks budget, the materials and services pretty status quo from last year. Not a whole lot of change going on there. For capital outlay this year, we are budgeting for a new zero-turn mower, much like the one we budgeted for last year. As our mowers have gotten a little older and the different pieces of property that we're mowing, Chapman Landing, Commerce Drive Park, et cetera, the trail, some of those mowers are taking a really good beating. And what we want to do is keep enhancing our parks. And so with some parks on the east side of the tracks, Miller, Heritage, we want to maintain that enhancement. And so by having two zero turns, we can accomplish that. Plus, it gives us another bagging mower. We only have one out of Veterans, so it helps us with picking up grass clippings because as we know, when it rains and the sun comes out, that stuff blows up like crazy. So it just creates a better situation for our employees to make it, enhance it. We also have another piece of equipment, a compact tractor. This is going to help us do small projects throughout the parks where we have to do any kind of trails, if we have to replace our park chips and the playground equipments, whatever the case may be. Also, it'll help with some snow removal, clearing sidewalks and allowing pedestrians to walk and whatnot. You'll see a couple of jumps as we talk about differences in personnel services. Obviously, has gone up a little bit. Capital outlay has increased a little bit, but we started a future park community reserve fund last year, and this year, last year we budgeted 50,000. This year we're budgeting 100,000. So those are the two kind of big differences that you'll see in the budget. Any questions for myself?
Just starting point, one more, Carol, just anyone playing the home game. Tab 7, just need to, the whole page needs to get changed. Wasn't one line item, all of the personnels are incorrect.
Hi, I'm
so-
sorry, we can't hear you. I can't hear
Oh,
you.
sorry,
Okay.
tab 7, the whole summary of personnel is incorrect, so we need to get that section redone.
I will send you those.
And then on our expense versus actuals, I know that in some of the funds, we take a more padded approach in terms of how much we're looking to have left over versus our estimated outlay. It looks like we're changing philosophy a bit on parks to be closer to a budgeted expense outlook. What kind of percentage padding are we looking at for overruns?
Once again, with materials and services, we don't pad.
Okay.
Everything is based on actual and planning for, things like the chips under the swings and stuff. We know what those cost per yard. When those go up, it's because we're planning on doing more of that work. Our costs are usually known. So that's why you'll see there's actually quite a bit of consistency in our materials and services because we've got that pretty honed in on what things cost. To the capital, the increase there once again goes back to that savings program. In previous years, we would have identified $100,000. It would just say, it would be like just a bucket of park improvement money. We've reduced that down to 50 and then slid more into the council approved side of that money for that savings fund. Because what we've learned is that if we never start to save, every year this fund's going to be depleted. And so if we ever want to do something bigger, then it's going to be a big hit to this general fund that we don't want to do. So that's why you're going to start to see that money increase. And that would be where it says down at the bottom on page 62 of the top table, future park committed reserves.
Mhm.
You've got the 50,000 from last year and then the additional 100, giving you the total of 150 combined, not 150 from this year.
And this, I made an accounting change so we can, since this is general fund money, we didn't want, Dave and I talked about, we didn't want that money to get kind of sucked into the rest of the general fund. So I set up a separate fund balance, committed fund balance line item. That money's still part of the general fund, but it is separated out so that it won't get mixed in with what everybody feels you can budget for something else. Can't go to police, sorry. Hey, Brian. So, but anyway, that's just an accounting change we made this year.
And,
Go ahead.
Dave, looking on page 64, it says Parks Fund 5-year CIP. Can you just elaborate a little bit more as to how these 4 line items made funding? Are they, I guess what I'm really kind of asking is Commerce Park. I didn't notice that as a CIP for top priority in the park master plan. So I was
So
curious.
yeah, the Commerce Park is only getting a driveway approach into the property. Right now, we don't have any way to get
Okay,
vehicles into there to even work on the property.
okay,
It's something that was actually budgeted for the current year we're in that we didn't get to. It's out to bid right now.
oh,
And by the time we go to construction, it's basically a rollover project into the next fiscal year.
okay,
So that's all we're really planning on doing is getting a driveway access off of Commerce Drive, because right now it's continuous curb and sidewalk with there's no way to get an emergency vehicle or anything in there. So that's all we're doing at this point,
okay. It's
other than
material.
cleaning and clearing, and we're looking at doing some pathways within there for the nature hiking and stuff. So there's no major capital project.
Gotcha.
It's just a driveway.
Gotcha.
As far as the rest of it, it's very generic numbers, because I'm waiting for direction basically from the Parks Committee and the council on how we want to establish our CIP, which at the next Parks Committee meeting, that's one thing we're gonna dive into deeper, well, as you know. So that we can start to come up with a strategy of how we're gonna move forward. And then you'll start to see these tables be more specific once we've got that roadmap, now that the master plan's done.
Thank you.
Dave, just a quick question related to that. So the Parks Master Plan is done and paid for, right?
Correct.
And so what, can you remind me, you probably said this, but what's the 230? So contractual professional, what do we anticipate using that for? 10, 160, 230, bottom of page 62.
Can actually tell you very specifically. That's for the Parks Department where the attorney funds come from, IT support. And then we do have a contribution for the Scappoose Bay watershed. We have an IGA with them for maintenance along the creek. They do that, and that's been shared with stormwater. So 50% comes out of parks, 50% comes out of stormwater, since it is the creek project in veterans. And then the other is actually, there's 20,000 identified just for emergency, whatever comes up kind of thing.
Perfect, thank you.
Is there a Parks SDC that's down in 24?
Yeah, we'll be getting to that later tonight.
Anyone else on?
I just have a
Go ahead.
point of question, clarification. How late are we going tonight? Are we setting a firm stop so that way we can go to the next day?
I'm open to people. I am not keen on doing an 11 PM,
Yeah, me
keep
neither.
rolling. So I'd rather be like, if it's 8 o'clock and we have 2 tabs left, push through. But if we're only like halfway done, move over to tomorrow is my preference. But
I second that motion.
yeah, Urban will be on top of that. Thank you, Jim.
In regards to parks, I do want to note back too that the personnel, there's no additional bodies. We haven't increased a body count on that for a long time.
I was gonna say also, how are you feeling about that? Because we've increased our parks. The spread seems thin, because I know, Doug, you've mentioned that in previous sessions as well. Like, are you,
Right. It's just, that just takes the utility workers more that rather than doing the lines of.
Increases you have later, can they help at all with the Parks area, the people you're coming in and?
Well, as we move forward and we build more parks, we're gonna have to address the staffing levels. It's just imminent. If Grabhorn were to develop the level of detail that we would want, would require another body almost just for that park. So it is something that it's on our mind, but we're just not there financially.
And there's general fund, so makes it much more difficult.
and actually, when you were saying having some assistance from the utility side of things, like we have an idea, and we could get there on the utilities, but percentage of time, so on, like, is this a headcount allocation thing, or just when you have free cycles, this really needs to get done?
That's kind of just how we map stuff out.
Okay.
We've got breaks, or if we got a sewer plug, obviously that's number one, but I shouldn't say we're not busy, but if we've got time, we try to hit the parks to make it all look good.
The effort is very much appreciated. Anyone else on parks? All right, tab 12, municipal court department.
Okay, I'll do municipal court. I could push it on Brian, but poor Brian doesn't have to deal with court very much. It's more of a administration thing. So basically the courts, operates, with the judge, and we get court and what, when I talked to the judge about budget, he says, you've got to expect that court should never be a revenue source. So we can't count on the money that court brings in, to really provide much revenue. Because he said if police are doing their job right, well, it won't have as much court, right? So that's kind of where that, I have never forgotten what he said. So basically, they handle misdemeanor and violations. Obviously, the revenues have gone down from courts over the last few years with COVID and everything else going on, and not having very many police officers, to be honest with you. You don't cite that many people. So, we do have half a person basically, working in court, that does the court work. Obviously, everybody in administration has to deal with court calls. And that's why the personnel, time, you do get some costs from pretty much everybody in administration, because we do answer most of the questions on it. So, we do that. We also back up. So court it's a relatively small budget. It's 301,875. The personnel piece of it is 99,652. And, there are materials and services, not a lot of materials and services for court. They do have a copier we have to support and some things like that. We do have to pay the judge, the court appointed attorneys, and if there's any prosecuting attorneys. So those are the biggest things that we do have in there. They do have a budget line item for assessments, which is basically a pass-through. If we don't have court revenue, we are not going to have that pass-through. So that money is there in case we get $100,000 that we have budgeted, for court revenue. If we don't, the assessment's going to certainly go down. The court revenue also does put some money into law enforcement, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, Carol, can you clarify what all is included in court salaries versus what's in contractual professional services?
Sure. Court, let me get that page here. Court
66.
salaries is half of Timmy Sue's wages and plus a piece of the administration from the, so part of my wages, part of Susan's wages, part of Kathleen's wages, do go, part of the city manager wages do get charged to court.
Question on that, because it looks like that got split out historically on like the 23, because we had line item 144 that zeroed out.
Oh, okay. That was one that was combined. They moved the courts a couple of years ago, I do believe.
We had a court clerk and then Timmy Sue assumed that responsibility. Is that?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
So that's why that went away. It would be really helpful, like on page 65, for example, you have the breakout of percentages of the amount, but it's not the actual amount, it's only percentages. But yet when you get to the next page, it uses amount. So just for correlation, it would be a lot easier to follow if we were using number system.
So next year I should not only have the percent breakout, because I basically was carrying on what Jill did in the past. You'd also like to see like a chart with the dollars on it.
Well, yeah.
Or just an extra column.
Right, yeah, that would work. It's just, we only see percentages of the breakout of the different salaries that are being paid out of this 55,046 listed on page 66. But then when we refer back to 65 to see what positions those are, we're only seeing a percentage rather than the amount. So just for to quantify that, it'd be a lot easier just to see the amount. And then for contractual professional services is 134,272 in the budget 24-25 column on page 66. Is that for the prosecutor and the community court judge?
They do come out of there. Let me grab it here. So in detail, yes, the prosecutor, the city attorneys and court appointed attorneys are there. And our city attorney, Sam, is also there. You also have got some IT support, and there is a court software program. Actually, I moved that one, so that one's not there. And we do have our judge is paid out of that line. And we do have a small amount budgeted for interpreters, which we generally don't need.
When we did the law enforcement exploration thing, we found out that justice court and circuit court might be able to actually handle our municipal court needs. So we can cite violations
Mhm.
and misdemeanors into those, whereas we currently cite those into muni court. Felonies have to be cited into circus court, obviously. But coming out of the conversation about parks and parks needing at least one extra position too, I just want to flag this for council to explore to see if that makes sense to explore contracting, or not contracting, that really wouldn't be contracting, but citing in those violations and misdemeanors into circuit court or justice court and doing away with our. It means saving money and potentially a public works.
That's an
having
interesting
another position. Law enforcement services in court don't necessarily go relate to one another. They can.
Right, absolutely.
So it wasn't like a Happy Meal where all.
That would be interesting. I know personally, if I got a ticket, I'd much rather come here than go to Vernonia.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, if they, I don't know the details yet, but if they could go to St. Helens, go to circuit court, there's that. Yeah, it's something I think that we.
Exploring.
Yeah.
Other question on court? Questions, concerns? All right, moving to tab 13. Honestly, we're making more.
All right, good evening, Budget Committee members. So I will start with the budget notes. So the budgeted amount from the general fund for the planning department is $1,063,822. The planning department anticipates revenue of $230,873. Personnel services costs are budgeted at $629,702. Material and services costs are estimated at $274,194. Capital outlay is budgeted at $129,243. And there will be a transfer to the administration department for $30,683. The planning department is addressing council goal 2.1 by budgeting $129,243 this fiscal year, and that is to complete the 50-year plan. We anticipate that all components of the plan will be placed on the council's agenda for adoption this fall. Once adopted locally, it would go to Columbia County for their consideration of the UGB expansion and establishment of urban reserves. Staff expects that that project will be completed in spring of 2025. That figure of $129,243 also includes the county's application fees for a major map amendment. So that is included in there as well. You'll notice there's an increase in personnel costs this year. I mentioned that earlier. That's obviously due to the cost of living adjustment of 3% for all employees that are paid out of this fund. It's also not just the planning employees. You'll notice on page 68, there's a number of different admin staff that are also paid out of this planning fund. But the big change is that the city engineer position would be moving to be funded 50% out of planning. This was done to better align that position to be under the Community Development Center's umbrella, which encompasses planning, engineering, and building departments. And to recognize that there's a percentage of city engineers' time that's spent on the review of development applications. And that starts from the beginning of the planning process, really through like basically inquiry meetings through the closeout of the project. So those can span several years. As a result of this change, it does increase personnel costs pretty much down that row in terms of health insurance, retirement benefits, Social Security, and workman's comp. And then it also means, as we mentioned earlier, that we do expect higher than normal revenue coming into the planning department. And this is because engineering fees that we collect, and there's 3 different types. There's engineering planning fees, construction document plan review fees, as well as infrastructure review fees related to that city engineer position. Those would stay within the planning department revenue. So typically, you can see we would estimate roughly 43,000-ish a year in revenue to the department. This year, we're estimating 230,873 in revenue. The contractual professional line item 230 has increased. There was additional budget added for attorney's fees. That was a good discussion earlier on that. I do definitely, because land use can be contentious, I do carry a higher amount in my line item for attorney's fees, and it was difficult to know kind of what to budget going from Peter's flat fee to basically a complete unknown. I think that we are looking good, though, with what we have in what we're estimating this year. I did bump it up again. We're entering into UGB hearings, highly unpredictable what that looks like. There's also money allocated to cover the cost of an engineering assistant to help with construction document plan review and to complete public infrastructure inspections in the field. That is not a new position. It basically carried over with the city engineer position into this department. The contractual professional line item also includes costs related to IT services, GIS services. There's also pass-through costs such as optional expedited planning review and expedited engineering review. So in other words, if an applicant needs their project to move faster through the process, subject to, consultant availability, they can pay extra to have their plans reviewed faster, and we pass that cost on to them. Let's see, travel training line item 240 costs went up, and that also in the fees, subscription, and dues, and that's because we're picking up 50% of the engineer's training costs and dues fees. And then publications, notices, advertising, line 242 went up, and that was specifically to cover the cost to have our code publishing company who hosts our online municipal code to codify the development code amendments that we're making related to the 50-year plan. So again, just trying to think through all the changes that are going to occur and costs that we might occur in the planning department this year as a result of all the work we're doing on our long-term project this year. So let's see if I have any other items for you. I think that pretty much covers it. Open to any questions you might have.
Answered all mine.
I was gonna say, on the contractual professional, again, the legal side of things, if you are doing more, we'll go with interesting build outs currently. Are you seeing the amount of legal use change, or is it more of just projecting what the flat versus hourly looks like?
What do you mean by interesting build outs?
The
Luba.
I was gonna say Buxton.
Yeah, so obviously I needed to carry extra for that, and that's reflected in the current year's fiscal year budget. And then that bumped up more going into UGB hearings. Yeah, I think it's adequately covered with what we're showing here. And again, I think as we go over time, of course, we don't know sometimes we know which ones are going to be contentious. But we don't know who's going to walk through the door and have a planning project they're applying for within any given year necessarily. So I think over time, we'll be able to better gauge if we can start rolling that back down. I would assume we could in the future.
So the other two developments, you do kind of anticipate something maybe happening within the next year there, which would then either start bringing in fees or costs. I mean, there'll be something on those two in the next year probably.
Which two?
Huser Estates and Dutch Canyon 4. Did you budget that
Yeah.
those are going to happen so you know things will happen?
That's
during the
correct. And we'll cover that during the building department discussion as well. Yep. Now, those have already been through planning, so we've collected those fees already, but it does reflect in the, estimated fees we would collect for building permits for those homes in the building fund.
Else?
Good.
Last thing for me on this though is for 24, as we're looking through budgets to actual, just versus historic trends, it looks like we're getting much closer to our predicted versus the outcome. Is that just, or I don't know, more precise planning, or is there worry that we had overruns unanticipated?
I think maybe a little of both. And I think in terms of actual, it's just planning is difficult to estimate just because we don't know sort of what applications we will process that year. And so, perhaps we had, and I can tell you for last year for actual, we spent a lot less in our contractual professional than we expected to. We budgeted pretty high for attorney's fees and then ended up not needing as much. So
Tab 14,
Okay, this is one of the easier ones, huh? Non-departmental.
non-departmental.
Yeah, basically the contingency now, last year, last budget year or the current budget year, the general fund, sent $67,000 to the building fund to keep it above water. So, 'cause it was underwater last year. So that has gone away. And, it's more self-sufficient, not totally there, but almost. And, then we've got our contingency, which ended up being a little higher than I had thought it was going to. So, we had a little more extra money. We got 1.4 million, and then the 1.7, which is the unappropriated ending fund balance. So those are all pretty straightforward. It's always good when the general fund ends up with extra money, right?
One minor element just brought up, typo on non-departmental at the very bottom, should be a comma, not a dot.
I'm sorry,
Yeah, just very bottom right-hand corner.
okay, got it.
You have one comment, and Carol, again, at our training last week, was it 30-some% of cities are budgeting in the negative? I mean, they're
Yes.
struggling, so I mean, it's really nice to see how well our departments have done to make it.
We have we have a healthy reserve in the general fund, and that's a good thing. Obviously, we don't want to just go out and spend it, but, because that carries us through. If something does end up going over, we'll have a little more options to come back to you guys and say we need to increase something.
And it is worth
Maybe we
noting,
need another police car because one gets wrecked. I don't know. Also,
and it is worth noting again, like, I think it paid off the plan of using our ARPA funds for capital projects and so on, as opposed to trying to buttress personnel, because I think that's what's biting a lot of community budgets currently.
If I could just a off the wall thing is, because I know the other day we were talking about urban renewal and all that, we had, maybe disputes with the fire district. Okay. When I mentioned that, most cities, a lot of cities have fire departments, but they don't have additional revenues to come in to cover them. So a fire department for a city Scappoose would cost you between $2.5 and $3 million, and that would come out of your general fund. So when we talk about comparing it to other cities, it's a little bit difficult, only because if they have their own fire department and no special district or special taxes for that, it can be very expensive.
Anything else on general fund, non-departmental, the most exciting of all funds?
oh no, there's
Actually, that's a lie. I know the most exciting fund. We'll get to it.
We'll get to it. You're right.
All right, moving on. Tab 15.
Law enforcement, I'll do this for Brian. I was going to make him do it, but this is basically the police department spends all this money. There is money that comes in from municipal court. A piece of that court fee goes to this particular fund, and it's there to do, safety initiatives and donut days and, all the stuff that the police department does that the public loves. So, that's there. It is also, we can use it for safety equipment, but it is a special revenue fund. So, we don't just spend it on anything. It is something that's very specifically been designated. So, we're working with a capital carryover of $13,000 approximately. So it's not it doesn't have a lot of money. So, we are expecting some additional revenue of like $5,000. So we're expecting that we're gonna end up with, spending $10,000 on training activities. Generally, we have not had the money in here to spend it on equipment. So we generally do it for the training activities and the socials and, like I say, the things that the public really likes. So it's not a very, big fund, but it is something that if we get the more tickets that the judge charges people for, the more revenue we'll get here.
So, point of clarification on this. So assessments come from an added fee on the presumptive bail amount on traffic citations, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
that's not saying here, so I just want to make it clear where the money actually sources from. And then I'm assuming that we've also checked to make sure what the allowable uses are.
I will. So I assume that we're using it on the right stuff, but I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, since they do source from, I think mostly traffic violations,
Yes.
there being some rules around that.
We haven't really made any changes to this fund, certainly since I've been here. So
Comment, question? I want everyone to stare about like 3 feet ahead of them. Just kind of look at something other than numbers for a second, because I think we're losing you. All right. Tab 16. Exactly. Watts House Fund.
All right, as I think everybody in the room knows that the Watts House is owned by the city of Scappoose across the park here. The city maintains that building as far as the structure, and the Historical Society operates within it. They take care of everything to the internals of it. We just take care of the bones. We pay for the utilities, the power, the gas, such thing, cable, internet type things. They provide that, so we don't have to do that. The maintenance funds would come out of general fund, but this year we don't need to transfer anything over. There's enough money within that fund to hold its own. So working capital carryover for the year is $32,456, with interest coming in at about $1,000, giving us $33,456 for the year. Materials and services, general maintenance, $5,000 we have budgeted for that in case some little project comes up. We pay the utilities, as I said, and pest control. We have a contract for the pest control over there. We do have a box elder issue we've been dealing with over the past few years, trying to get that under control. Capital outlay, we have $10,000 identified for that. We've been waiting for the, down in the basement where the museum is. They've been working on, if any of you are toured it, they've been working to restructure cabinets and things. And once they've done that, we're going to do a lighting project. There's some very old halogen track lighting down there that's not very safe. People bump their heads on it and things. And so as soon as they've figured out what the layout of that's going to look like, we're going to go in and do some modernization to that lighting. And then we're also going to put some irrigation in the front lawn. We irrigated the backyard a couple of years ago. We just need to do the front. We've been kind of working with them to do some landscaping improvements and stuff out in the front yard of that. So once we know where those flower beds will be for sure, then we can put the proper irrigation system in. Leaving us with a contingency of $12,456. That is the Watts House budget.
And I remember from previous years, we did have some like actual like structural maintenance challenges.
Yeah,
that
we
were working
did the
on.
roof, I think 8 or 9 years ago. We repainted it about 7 years ago. The porch was rebuilt on a grant, I think about 5 or 6 years ago. Time starts to slip away quickly, but
I was gonna say
Um,
that seems sooner.
yeah, unfortunately, the balusters on the railings are starting to rot away, so we may be looking at having to do some replacement on some of that fairly soon in the railings.
Nice.
All in all, the house is in good shape and doing well. Any questions?
All right. Tab 17.
I'm sorry, I did have my hand raised. I do
Raised
have a
up.
question.
Go ahead.
I was wondering, is there going to be any budget, is there any budget in here or money for decorations or, and I didn't catch that, like, for example, if we want to really build out Whoville, is there any funding in the budget for that?
The Historical Society funds all of the Whoville projects.
Right, okay, so we're not adding any additional funding.
They do
on
they do
this.
in the CEP grant, they ask for money, but that's for like the light fight. So they can do the light fight. And they do go get grants. They do receive grants for lighting and whatnot. And they did receive quite a few $1,000s in donations.
Okay, thank you. There's,
Michelle Brown? I was gonna say, Michelle?
I think it's just just needs to be fixed, but the Watts House 5-year CIP, I think the amount has to be spent in the 5 years, correct? The pest control does not balance to 10,000.
Sorry, I can't hear what she's saying.
Oh, for the 5-year CIP, the elements are spent for the 5 years, like the pest control line item is $1,000, or is this aggregate?
Yeah, those are ongoing. So the $10,000 is just the total over the 5 years of what we're estimating. Is that the question?
Does that help, Michelle?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't equal 10,000, so
That's true.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah. So I just think it needs to be recalculated.
Catch?
I do have a question. They are looking at building an outdoor item to hold a wagon. But they're looking to fund that themselves, I think, through grants and stuff, but will be coming for probably permits.
Yes, as I understand it, but there may be an ask, but they haven't
Yeah, I don't,
presented any asks of us yet for that.
probably at least a year away.
I anticipate that coming before council soon, from what I understand.
Okay, just to double check, Michelle, do you have a follow-up or?
No, sorry, I'll put my hand down.
Worries. Okay, yeah, no worries. All right. Tab 17, PEG fee fund.
Okay, the PEG fee fund, right?
Mhm.
And I figured I better look up what PEG stands for because somebody would ask, so I figured I'll just tell you right up front. Okay, what PEG fees are is public education and government channels. It's something that goes with, Comcast, basically. It's a part of the Communication Act, for cable providers. So that's what the PEG fee fund is. Now, I was told last year when we renegotiated our Comcast that they were going to quit paying us PEG fees, but they've kept paying us PEG fees. And so I keep taking them. I'm just going to add them, but this is basically where the fund that we store those because they are very restricted. And we use those for, for things like the website and, the newsletter, some of the things that we know that if they ever do really go away, that we're going to have to fund probably out of the general fund in the future at some point. But we're still getting them. I got one Friday. So, so I'm not going to argue a couple $1,000s that we got from that. So it certainly helps us with our newsletter and stuff. So this is basically, here, and we want it to go for stronger communication. So that's why it is paying for the website and the newsletters at this point. And it had a beginning cash position of $31,864. We do get some interest on it. And I didn't really budget that we were going to get any PEG fees because I'm not expecting that we should, but we are. So we're just going to keep adding it, to the fund. And then we have been spending, we do have budgeted about $30,595, to cover the cost of the newsletter and the cost for the website. So it's not very exciting, but it's money that if they keep sending it, we're going to keep using it. So thank you.
Saying, is this just like Comcast? Because I know we
Really,
also have
Comcast is
like
the only one
franchise
that sends
fees.
it.
That's separate, okay.
Yeah, Comcast is the only one that sends us that. We do have a couple other telecommunication like Astound and a couple of other
Yeah.
broadbands, but they've never sent us any, and it's something that is not required.
They had, in the contract, it was predicated on us doing a local access channel show, so many hours a week and everything, but we didn't see necessarily with our internet, the way we do our website and everything.
That's interesting, because didn't know about that.
So we were gonna tell them we're not able to do that local access number of hours a week and figured the PG fund would go away, but hasn't.
There is an email somewhere from Alex explaining all this. So we'll see if we can find it.
Okay. I don't believe she sent it to me.
Counselor Santiago?
She just said it was going
Yeah.
away, so.
Well, I just want to clarify, and this is for just electronic communication, correct? It's not for any other type of paper communications, like newsletter sent,
Well, the
postage.
No, I think we use the
newsletter is
paper
kind of
newsletter.
paper.
Yeah.
You
Newsletter
do
is
it? Okay.
basically
You do.
paper.
And it's
It does
something,
go out
and-
with the utility bills.
okay. And just for council, maybe if we don't want it to go away, is there something that we can do in collaboration with Kohai to keep the pay? But I'm not sure. We can talk about that. So. Did that make sense? Did you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Got it. All right, anyone else? Tab 18 continues. Building fund.
All right,
Building Fund 13.
Building Fund 13. The building department estimates that 22 single-family home permits could be issued this upcoming fiscal year. In addition, we anticipate a new restaurant will be constructed, as well as one new commercial building and one new light industrial building. For this upcoming fiscal year, the city will continue partnering with Columbia County to provide building official services. This provides us with the maximum amount of flexibility so that we do not have set costs to employ a building official full-time if the department does slow down and we do not issue the number of permits we expect might be issued. Again, this is where, crystal ball would be super helpful. However, we do not have that. And so we make our best assumptions based on sort of what's already been approved through the planning department, knowing that typically projects do move forward. And so we would expect certain things to be built. The building fund begins the year with a starting position of $54,908. Permit revenue and miscellaneous fees are anticipated to be $240,656. Total fund resources are expected to be $295,564. Personnel services costs are budgeted at $87,632. Materials and services are estimated at $192,114. Contingency is set for $7,680. So last year, as Carol mentioned, the general fund did supplement the building funds department. This can be typical for building departments just because of the uncertainty of the market. Obviously, we've had high inflation the last few years and high interest rates for borrowing money or financing projects. So we did see a slowdown the last few years. Last year, general fund contributed $72,816 to cover the fund. This year, they're not sending that general money, but they are helping out by covering the building department's portion of the community development center's lease. I'm estimating that's just over $11,000, and then also they would be sending the SDC admin fees transferred to the building fund, which is $15,656. So still some help to the building fund, but certainly less than last year. There aren't any big changes proposed to the building fund this year. We really are hoping we do see the development that we've projected, but again, that can be difficult to forecast. Let's see, to the question earlier, we do expect that we would have 3 subdivisions in construction this summer even. That would be Kale Street subdivision, just 8 lots. User subdivision, which would be, I believe it's 37 lots, and then Dutch Canyon Phase 4, which is 33, I believe. So of those, we estimated there could be roughly 22 home permits that could get pulled this year.
I guess question there is, do you anticipate property tax from those would eventually come to the city?
They will,
Not for years.
yeah, they will, but there is a delay between once it's built, assessed, and the tax revenue.
You know if the commercial building and light industrial are in our urban renewal zone?
Let me think
That
here.
is true. And
Did you
so-
look at it
so
already?
the houses, I believe, are all out.
The houses are
Are
out.
out. That's what Andrea had sent us some numbers to say
Um,
maybe 90,000 additional property tax revenue.
I would have to look at that for sure. I don't think the light industrial building is in, but do we have a map in the back of this?
I don't think so. Okay. We have the urban renewal map, but I'm not sure it'll,
I could see a map. I'll know right away.
there's in the urban renewal section, there is a map.
Oh, I can see it across the room.
I was gonna say, it's right over there, I think.
So the light industrial is not in. And I believe the commercial building is, and the restaurant,
Yes, that's one
Is-
by Fred Meyer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then.
Yep.
Comments? Pete? All right. Tab 19. Street Fund 20.
All right. So the street fund receives its revenues from several sources. One of those is the state gas tax. The second would be our local fuel tax. Third would be the federal surface transportation program. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. We receive interest on the money that's in the bank and our working capital carryover. So state gas tax for this year is $654,955, which is only up $994 from the previous year. Our local fuel tax projections are at 250,000, which is the same as previous years. It seems to be fairly stable at that amount. The federal surface transportation program is projected at 102,000. This is been increasing slowly over the years, but the one thing that you're going to see, you were asking for changes, is in the intergovernmental portion, you're going to see a pretty hefty drop in that. We received substantial amount of money paid out from this fund a couple of years ago. They used to bank the money for us and we allowed it to accumulate in the federals fund. Now they've automatically exchanged it every year and it just drops into our account right after the first of the year. And this year that's at 102,000. So they're used to show this big, I think the last year it was in there was like 796,000, but then they slid that into us. And so you're going to see just a change in that moving forward. This will be the new consistent manner of this revenue coming in. And then interest for the year is at 36,000, which is the same as last year. Interest rates have been up, as most of you know, so the city's been doing pretty well on revenue from that. Working capital carryover for the year is $1,068,714, given a total resource budget of $2,111,669. Personnel services for the year are at $285,876, which is down $63,450 from the previous year. That's from the shift in the city engineer sliding out of the street fund and going over into the planning side. Funding for that aligns with it. And then materials and services for the year, we've dialed this in pretty good. It's $217,465. We're down $15,210 from the previous year. Capital outlay for the projects for the year are estimated at $860,000 with transfers of $58,550, which is down $25,231 for the year. Our contingency for the fund this year is $689,778, which is down $541,763, giving you a balanced budget once again of $2,111,669. Projects for the year. We're planning on continuing with our sidewalk adding and improving projects. We've got First and Maple out to bid as we speak. So this summer, when the kids are out, we're hoping to do those improvements on the corner of First and Maple on the north side of the mid school there to get kids to that school in a safer manner. And then we're kind of in a savings program for our Grant Watts area projects that for those of you who remember when the fuel tax came out, we advocated strongly that that's where our focus was going to be. And so we're going to start saving up over the next few years to accomplish that. Those are about $1.5 million in combined projects, and at $250 per year, it's going to take us a few years to get there. We're also continuing just sidewalk enhancement programs throughout the city, any little spot that we see, or if we can partner with a developer. We've done some projects like on 6th and Elm, where a subdivision come in, it's like, hey, if you're here, can we just work with you to go a little further? And we've done that and been very successful. The other thing we continue to do is promote safe routes to school. We try to apply for the grant every time we can. Unfortunately, Scappoose doesn't score very well because of income and school status of financial. We just don't qualify as well as other communities. But we continue to try every year. The other thing that we've been working on is a couple of years ago, we did a citywide LED streetlight conversion. That is done and behind us, which is working great. However, we continue to monitor for dark streets and make improvements to those. Right now, we have Sawyer and Williams on our radar, just down from Pizza Vendor, if you will. There's a few subdivision cul-de-sacs and things in there that we're working with the PUD to make some improvements there. Council goal that we're trying to tackle here is 5.4. We're going to work on updating the TSP and SDCs for streets. And that is it. Any questions?
Big fan of all of the sidewalk work, as walking all the time around the city. The sidewalks are very nice, very helpful. I was gonna say, ramps, I actually had a question. What was? I think I'm good. Questions, comments? All right, I propose we take 5 minutes, get a breather. Everyone okay? 5-minute break. Get a little air, water, restroom. Cool. Recess for 5 to 10 minutes. Say 5 minutes.